What was it? You wrote in Ross? Is that what you did?
No, I wrote my name in.
Oh, you wrote yourself in.
Yeah, Ross doesn't like it when I volunteer him for things anymore. He's drawn the line with that. I didn't think there were that.
Ooh. Did you need him? The clock in the back being like 3 minutes fast is so distracting.
I agree. And it doesn't matter how often you reset that.
Oh, it just keeps getting.
It's going.
All right, so we're going to call this to order. It's a public session. We have Scott Weden here. Just quick administrative stuff up front. Scott's going to present for 25, 30 minutes, something like that. And then we'll do the questions. Will be moderated because we end up with more questions than time. So there are 3x5 cards. Please write your questions and either pass them up or bring them up to me, and I'll handle asking those of Scott at the end. Try to get as many in as we can. We'll run right up to 6 o'clock with the questions. There are evaluation sheets as well in the back. Please fill those out. Give us your feedback. We'll take those into account as part of the search committee. And please get those to us tonight because we are meeting after the final session to talk through all of the feedback. And other than that, thank you all for attending. And I'll give you a quick introduction to Scott. So Scott Weden has lived in Plymouth since 2004 with his wife, Christine. Prior to that, Scott was a lifelong resident of Ashland. For 14 years, Scott served as a police officer, police sergeant, and police chief in the town of Holderness. Scott was also a member of the Ashland Fire Department and served as chief of the department from 2000 to 2004. Scott has served as a select board member and budget committee member. In 1993, Scott pursued a career in risk and health management with New Hampshire Municipal Association Property Liability Trust and Health Trust located in Concord, New Hampshire, which provides property, casualty, municipal consultation, and medical coverages to towns, cities, schools, and county government. During his 28 years, Scott served as the Risk, Health, and Benefits Manager. Scott's passion was making sure the members received quality service in obtaining training, consultation, and a variety of municipal services. Currently, Scott is the Emergency Management Director, Code Enforcement Officer, and Building Inspector for the town of Plymouth. Scott.
Thank you, Zach. First and foremost, I want to thank the board as well as the townsfolk for allowing me the opportunity to apply for the town manager's position and go through the interview process. My presentation will be focused on looking forward, and they're my thoughts and ideas from living in Plymouth for the last 18 years, as well as working with the town for the past 16 months. So what I'm going to focus on in my presentation is really 5 areas. The first one is talking about value statements. The second is to talk about strategies to control the tax rate and budgetary process, economic development, leadership skills and leadership styles, and my philosophies with that, as well as how we can move forward and looking forward. So a little bit about me in my introduction. Again, I've lived in Plymouth for 18 years. I've worked in municipal government for the past 42 years in one capacity or another. I've also, in my duties at Health Trust and Property Liability Trust, New Hampshire Municipal Association, and the Local Government Center, I've dealt with a lot of municipal areas. And some of those are professional recruitment, financial liability assessments, and providing those to towns, cities, schools, and counties across the state of New Hampshire, policy and procedure development for police, fire, and town administration, disaster recovery, with regards to how a town secures their systems and how they operate in the event of an emergency. Succession planning. And that's something that I worked hard and long on as part of a small committee at Health Trust in developing a succession plan. And some of you may say, well, you worked 28 years there and you retired. I did retire because it was part of the succession planning. My goal was to stay there 25 years. And it took us 3 years to write a succession plan so that others could move forward as others wanted to retire. Record retention and destruction. Like I said, recruitment and retention. I was one of the first and co-developers of the Antioch College Municipal Leadership Institute, as well as the Select Persons Institute, which is still going strong today. I've been involved in union negotiations from a benefits perspective and sat at the table with the SEA, the NEA, town, city, schools, and county negotiating their benefits on behalf of the town. I've been involved in budget development. At Health Trust, I oversaw the Benefits and Wellness Department, which represented just about a $7 million budget. It was my responsibility to develop that budget, implement that budget with sound judgment to the board of directors, and I successfully did that over my career of 28 years working with the organization. Oops, that went too fast. And how do I go back? Any idea? What's that? Okay, good. So the first part I wanted to talk about is creating a value statement. At Local Government Center, when I worked there, this guided our operations with regards to how we serve towns, cities, schools, and counties across the state. We represented over 50,000 municipal employees, school employees, county employees, including family members, with medical, life insurance, dental, and ancillary products. So the mission that I've always followed and guided myself by is to provide affordable, fair, high-quality municipal services and responsive, accessible local governance, ensuring all persons the opportunity to enjoy contributing to and being part of a Plymouth community. And I state that as our mission for a couple different reasons, is that we only get one chance to make a really good impression on the visitors that come to town, potential property owners, those that live in town, our taxpayers. And we need to include them all in the process on how we guide this organization. A vision to be a town with an emerging urban vibrancy guided by a small town sense of community. An urban vibrancy, the buzz, the vitality, the creative energy that propels economic growth for cultural achievement. And part of that cultural achievement is that Plymouth has several niches in our community. We have a entertainment venue. We have a retail venue. We have restaurants. We have antiques. We have a lot of niches that we can expand upon and done in a proper way through economic growth. Core values. This is something that I worked hard and long on with the Local Government Center. Core values representing the beliefs and behaviors by which all members of the town of Plymouth organization shall conduct ourselves in providing a common basis for making and evaluating all decisions and actions are as follows. First and foremost, customer-focused service, integrity, innovation, accountability, and stewardship, as we have to be really good stewards of the town's financial funds. And how do we do that as we move forward? And part of that is, in my previous leadership roles that I've had in the 3 organizations that I've worked for, as police chief in the town of Holden, as fire chief in the town of Ashland, in my role at the Local Government Center, these core values always brought us success. And we stick by them, and this guides us through our operations day in and day out. Creating strategic priorities. And what should those be? It should be transparent government. It should be strong and resilient economy, safe and flourishing neighborhoods, sustainable environment and infrastructure promoting ecotourism destination of the town, and effective and efficient services. When I talk about Plymouth being an ecotourism destination, I talk about assuring responsible travel, natural areas, conserving our environment, and looking out for the well-being of our residents. And making sure that we create partnerships with those involved in the community, whether it's business, schools, medical community, the New Hampshire Electric Co-op, Plymouth Village Water and Sewer Department, and all of the other entities that we need to have a community partnership with. We want Plymouth to be a place that you can come live, you can stay, you can work, and you can do recreation. And we have a lot of that's available to us. And again, part of the niches that we have as a community. Strategies to control the tax rate. And I know this is on the forefront of everybody's mind, and looking at where we are today. Our current tax rate is $30.49 per thousand. We're the 9th highest tax rate in the state of New Hampshire. We don't want to be number one. So what can we do as an organization to control the increase in taxes? First thing we can do is we can work with our community partners. We can work with our tax-exempt properties, we can work with our nonprofits, and work towards coming into pilot agreements. A pilot agreement is payment in lieu of taxes. Each one of those nonprofits and those tax-exempt properties takes services from the town of Plymouth. And right now, we don't collect anything on that. And just a point of interest, the top 7 tax-exempt properties, nonprofits in the town of Plymouth have a valuation of property of $36 million. Just let that sink in for a minute. $36 million in only the top 7. So if we negotiate with them as a community partner and are able to get something in lieu of taxes that can help us support the financial burden the town of Plymouth has today with regards to the budget and with regards to a capital improvement plan on how we continuously come up with a plan to fund the needs of each one of our departments in the town of Plymouth. We need to be responsible through budgeting, through timeliness, accuracy, approval, implementation, and monitoring. A budgetary process, there should not be any surprises. If we are working effectively and efficiently with the department heads throughout the year, when it comes to proposing those budgets in the month of August, there should be no surprises. It's my responsibility from a financial responsibility that is governed by the Town Manager RSA 37 to hold that financial responsibility in making sure I am doing my due diligence to provide the most cost-effective budget and efficient services that we possibly can in the town of Plymouth. So it's my responsibility to work with the department heads, keeping the board informed along the way of how we're going to manage the budgetary process as we move forward. And again, no surprises. Something we haven't done is financial liability assessment of our processes. How do we look at our financial liability? How do we look at the processes that we use today? Is there more an efficient and effective way to do our financial accounting, to do our financial payroll, bookkeeping? I don't know, but we won't know until we do financial assessments. Another thing, procurement policy, is that we know every one of the town buildings uses either propane or heating oil. We have town vehicles that either use gas or diesel. And what kind of a procurement policy do we go through to secure those services? Currently today, we don't have one. But we can save some money if we really look at the necessary needs that we have and put those out for procurement and get a really good price. The other thing that we haven't captured upon is what can we do with the school? We know the school uses propane. We know the school uses heating oil. We know the school uses pellets. Maybe we should talk with the school on how we could collaboratively leverage our position and be able to secure a better price by going through a procurement policy. An RFP process for services and merchandise is having a designated process on how we put out to RFP and how we secure those services and merchandise. And continuing to have a CIP, a capital improvement plan, because having a capital improvement plan just proves that we're financially responsible in identifying the needs of what the town will have for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years out. It's a moving document. It's a living document. Is it always going to remain the same? Absolutely not, based on the needs of the departments of what we may see or what we may encounter. I think the other thing we have to look at when we talk about controlling the tax rate is we have to talk about the current use property. And I'm all in favor of current use and conserving our roads, our land, our rivers, our forest. But in other states, the state contributes to the taxes that are leveraged on current use property. The state of New Hampshire doesn't have that. Is there an opportunity that we can engage in communications, in conversation with state regulators on, is that a possibility for the state of New Hampshire? For example, in the state of Vermont, if you have over so many acres in current use, the state of Vermont pays a portion of those taxes, not at the highest level, but a portion of those taxes back to the town to keep that property in current use. We're no different than Vermont. We have the same land mass. We have the same demographics. Why can't we have something like that in the state of New Hampshire? There has to be a discussion that's had with regards to that. Economic development strategies. Local government is at the core of people's lives, and it can and should serve as a model workplace for the future of work, is that people come to us when they need something in town, whether it's a resource, whether it's just a simple question that needs to be answered. The town manager and leaders can reinvent themselves in their leadership. Change is happening. It is clear that our realities have changed due to changes in the economy, social and cultural transition, mobile public, IT assets, technological advances, cybersecurity, and demographic trends. These changes will impact workplace planning, commercial real estate in downtown areas, and commuting patterns involving parking and public transportation use. And we already know that we have a parking issue in the town of Plymouth, and how can we expand upon the parking availability that we currently have? Along with these issues, many local governments are dealing with the dearth of affordable housing options. We continue to see this imbalance with demand and supply in housing. And we're fortunate enough that the Planning and Development Department, under Joseph's direction in working through a grant, is we received a grant with regards to the Housing Opportunity Program, which was a $134,000 grant that will be discussed at the next Select Board meeting, and accepting that grant and how do we move forward on that. That grant would provide us consultation from a consultant that would look at our zoning ordinance, that would look at our housing, our affordability of housing, as well as our housing zones. So look at our single-family, multifamily, agricultural, highway commercial, village district commercial. It would look at all of our zones and make recommendations back to the town on how can we do better in providing affordable housing. Is there opportunities with off-campus housing? Some of those houses are being sold today. And what type of partnership can we make in getting those houses turned into affordable housing and working with them? The pandemic has only exacerbated the situation, making it an ever-pressing issue for local governments. It's not just Plymouth, it's the entire state of New Hampshire, well and beyond our state. I think some of the things we have to talk about and things we have to look at is, as an ecotourism destination, and we have a lot of opportunity, and we really have to capitalize on the niches that we have in our economic specialization, which generates strength. And we have that. We have existing niches, we have potential niches, and what is our marketing opportunities to communicate those out to not only Plymouth, but those communities far and beyond? We need to grow on our existing niches, bridging the lakes and the mountains. That's one of our niches. We have a perfect destination that people want to come and stay, where they have opportunity to be at the lakes and they have the opportunity to be at the mountains. But we also have our popular niches in town, which are wedding venues, entertainment, restaurants, antiques, specialty shops, in our downtown business area, as well as Tenny Mountain Highway. So how do we expand and enhance upon the current niches we have based on an ecotourism destination? So the critical question, what policies, practices, and programs have become dinosaurs in our town business? What has the pandemic changed in our town? What method are we using to equip our departments and employees to do their task with authority? What is kindling our method of operations that can be dealt with in small group discussions? Revitalization of Economic Development Committee, in a downtown master plan addendum to what we have for a master plan. And not just downtown, the village district, looking up to Russell Street, looking up to Langdon Street, looking down to Green Street. How can we build upon what we have today in the revitalization? You know, one of the biggest failures in business is that it's always been done that way. And I'm not one to settle on it's always been done that way. Is that I want to strive to see what else can be done in a different method, in a different modem. We need to create a vision to create conceptual layout to guide future growth and development. How, why, where, and when to build or rebuild. We have a downtown Main Street design guideline that was created back in October of 1999 that really hasn't been exercised. And we did a lot with the Main Street project, but we need to relook at that, update it, and revitalize that plan that we already have in place. There's a gentleman by the name of David Milner. David Milner is a downtown revitalization specialist. He's written several papers on downtown revitalization. In fact, he's a nationwide expert, and he actually did the Greater Meredith Downtown Plan back in 2006. If anybody has time and they want to read about downtown revitalization and economic development, he created a white paper back in 2017. And I have followed him for many, many years with regards to the work that I did at the local government center and working with communities on redevelopment. And he's a great resource to be able to understand how and why we rebuild, we build, and we vitalize the downtown areas to meet the economic need, the social need, and the cultural need of the community. I want to talk a little bit about my leadership styles and talk about what leadership means to me. Leadership to me is a privilege. It's a privilege to be a leader of an organization. And the reason I say that is you have a lot of oversight on someone's career path and on someone's personal life. And when we talk about authentic and authoritative leadership, it's bringing the art of their whole self and participate fully and honestly in the workplace. Organizations that foster authentic behavior are more likely to engage enthusiastic, motivated employees in a psychological safe culture. And one thing that we need to protect is our most valuable asset, our employees. And I say that from about 6 different points. I say that with regards to creating a culture of recognition and feedback, creating a culture that accepts evaluations while developing goals and objectives and being held accountable to those, training and development for our staff, which all comes with succession planning on where do we want our staff to go, what potential does our staff have, organizational and individual alignment, making sure that we're aligning with what the employee's needs are and the employee wants to be in the town of Plymouth. a healthy work culture, a safe culture, and recognition and appreciation. I think when you bring an authentic leader, it means leading by example. It's demonstrating through your actions that you practice the same values and behaviors you expect from your employees and from your staff. Some of the characteristics of an authentic leadership style is what I have followed and practiced through my career. A sense of purpose. Being a leader that's authentic involves demonstrating a sense of purpose in order to seem real and approachable. Distinct values. Relationship building. Goals and self-discipline. A genuine heart, and a sense of humor. And when I say that, I want to talk a little bit about what my personal goals and my primary goals as a leader have been and would continue to be. My personal goals is that our integrity, accountability, and perseverance. My primary goal is being a thoughtful leader. And everybody matters. Every voice matters. I am ambitious and driven. I thrive on challenges and set goals for myself so I have something to strive towards. I am not comfortable with settling with that's the way it's always been. Always looking for an opportunity to do better and achieve greatness as a team in a town and a community. I have been promoted in my 3 jobs to leadership roles, and I've only held 3 jobs. And my 3 full-time jobs I was a police sergeant in Ashland, a police chief in Holderness, and I was the risk and health manager and benefits manager at New Hampshire Local Government Center. Those are the 3 jobs that I had. I never started at the top. I always was promoted up through the ranks. I think one of the most important things as an authoritative leader is that everybody needs to know the mission. We need to provide clarity and direction and vision to our staff. Empower team members to take charge based on their strengths, their opportunities, and their skills. And always use a vision and strategy to forecast the future for the town. And that strategy, those priorities, have to be set by the board and the town manager. But those aren't the only parties involved. Is that if we're not including our department heads as our management team to provide input and opportunity, that's where the growth is developed. Last but not least, looking to move forward. Results begin when 6 elements are in place. And this is just based on my thoughts, my experience, and how I've worked with the local government center and the partnerships that I've established and the network that I've created. And one thing I was taught at an early age is always remember that your network is your net worth. Is that you build that network so you can reach out, call, talk, consult, and discuss any problems that you may have. But the results begin when these 6 elements are in place. A positive working relationship between the board and the manager is that we need to share the mission, we need to share the value, and we have to work collaboratively. A shared mission about what the town wants to accomplish and a commitment to move forward together. The relationship ensures that a collegial rapport occurs based on trust and shared values. The mission guides the town's allocations of limited resources, money, talent, and time. And commitment pulls all of this together. A comprehensive strategic plan is necessary to provide focus to both the board and the manager. We need to institute a leadership retreat where the board, myself, if selected as town manager, and the department heads sit down and we talk about our strategic goals. And we talk about that during the budgetary process so that we know what the upcoming year is going to look like. And most importantly, continued communications with department heads, citizens, the business community, our schools, which we have 4 of in the community. We have SAU 48. We have Mount Prospect Academy. We have Mountain Village Charter School, and we have Plymouth State University. Our medical community, whether it's Spear, Midstate, or any local provider in the area. And state and county representation to make sure all voices are heard and have representation at the table, excuse me, but as well that we have representation at the table and we're able to work collaboratively and have an open dialogue with those parties. That is the end of my presentation. I thank you for taking the time to attend tonight and listen to what my thoughts are with regards to the position of town manager. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Scott. I have a few different questions here, but we'll start with communication being more important today. How do you plan on utilizing PETV and the town's communication platforms to better serve the community?
I've worked on several communication plans over the past. I was in charge of, like I said, the wellness initiative for the Health Trust, the Slice of Life program, which covers 50,000 lives. And developing a platform for communications and exercising the ability that you have with the resources that you have to communicate our messages out. And our messages have to be clear, consistent, and to the point. That's how I would utilize the public TV in that platform.
Thank you. Well, when talking about authentic leadership style, you use the word authoritative a few times. Is your leadership style authoritative or authentic? Was that just a slip of the tongue?
Not at all. It's a mix of both. When you're an authoritative leader, what you're doing is that you are a leader that knows the mission. And I'm not talking authoritative that I'm telling somebody to do something. It's a type of leadership skill that you know the mission, empowers a team to take charge. A leader uses vision to drive strategy and encouraging team members to use their strengths to emerge as leaders themselves. It's providing guidance, mentoring, and coaching to make sure you're getting the potential out of the department or the employee that is part of the town organization.
Thank you. In addition to procurement, and since gas and oil are expensive and environmentally negative, do you have a plan or a vision for using alternative energy, electric vehicles, solar, et cetera, to offset the costs both financially and environmentally?
I do actually, Zach. That's a great question. And I think we have to look at all opportunities that are available out there. We're starting to see grants come through on electric vehicles. In fact, we discussed a grant in our planning and development meeting this morning that would provide a skid steer, an electric skid steer to a recycling center. So we're researching that a little bit with regards to a power station for that, working with the Energy Commission and committee that we have in town to be able to maybe go forward with this grant. It's something that will be brought to the board for discussion on regards to that, but I am in favor of doing whatever we possibly can do to conserve the energy, not only in this town, but in this country.
Thank you. You talked a lot about not settling for the status quo. Can you give an example of a time where you didn't settle for the status quo and what was the outcome?
Yep. So part of my responsibilities at the local government center health trust was the development of the Slice of Life program. And we worked with vendors, several different vendors that we had multiple contracts with over in providing that program platform. And that program platform includes everything from a communication strategy to a program design strategy, which include technology, incentives, as well as engagement. And the contractor backed out on us with regards to the engagement piece. And I wasn't settling for what they were going to provide to us. So we went after them for a breach of contract. And in every contract that I've negotiated and that I've been involved in, there's always an out. We always want to leave ourselves an out if the contract's not being adhered to in a professional manner and demeanor. So we had to negotiate with them, back that piece out of our contract because I wasn't settling for what they were providing for an engagement platform. And we went with a different vendor for that one piece of it and had a successful program implementation that year.
Good example, thank you. How should the town work with landlords or property management companies in order to ensure peace for residents and to encourage long-term residents versus student housing?
I think a start to that is the community council that we work with the university. Is there other things that can be done? Absolutely. Do we need to look at policy? Do we need to look at ordinances? Do we need to look at staffing? Take the pirate party, for example. It occurs on a public street in the town of Plymouth. Is that sustainable for the future? Absolutely not. So what can we do to better protect the town of Plymouth, its streets, its residents, and public policy to make sure that someone's going to be held responsible for that? And how can we move through that process to assure that any policy we have in place, any ordinance we have in place is adhered to by the organizer of that event? And it's working with the university system. It's working with the landlords. And I can tell you that in my experience as emergency management director and with the guidance of the fire department and the police department, we meet with the off-campus housing landlords. And let me give you an example of how they participate in events that take place. The pirate party had roughly 3,000 people in a 582-foot stretch of land by 50 feet wide. And you can imagine the trash, the garbage that was the result of that party after. Those landlords came out and within 40 minutes cleaned that entire area. Yes, the street sweeper went through to collect any glass or miscellaneous debris that was there, but those landlords want to work with us. They want a safe environment. They want a safe community. And I think it's building that relationship and continue to work with them on what we can do better. And we always can do better. We can't settle for what we do today. We always can do better, and how we facilitate that process.
In talking about working with the other town employees in your team, you mentioned making psychologically safe cultures. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is rumors. Dispelling any rumors that are in the workplace is that it has to be open and honest communications. That's an expectation I have, and that's what people are going to be held accountable to. We're not focusing on what a third party said. We're not focusing on what a rumor throughout the organization is. If someone has a question, or if I have a question of a department head or an employee, I obviously am going to use the chain of command and go through the department head. But we're going to have honest and open communications, and we're not going to let rumors dispel the town's governance.
Thank you. Obviously, nonprofits are a challenge in this, or tax exempt land and properties. You mentioned that a few times. What ideas do you have if pilot agreements can't be reached?
I'm not going to be pessimistic in that regards. I'm going to say that pilot agreements can be reached. It's a matter, again, of open and honest communications with those community partners that are nonprofit and tax exempt. Have we truly sat down at the table with them and had a conversation? There's ways to negotiate these. There's professional negotiators that I've brought to the town back in December that we started a conversation with. And we can continue that conversation because it's money well spent. If you only collect 2 to 3% on $36 million, you can imagine that will clearly fund a capital improvement plan and reduce the overall tax rate that the property owners in Plymouth face today. So I'm very optimistic of having an open dialogue with them. And it has to be an open dialogue with balance, because they truly are a community partner. We don't want them to go anywhere. We just want them to be able to pay their fair share.
Do you have any plans for ways that the town could help Plymouth State students?
I think we do help Plymouth State students in a few different avenues. I know the fire department, for one, has Plymouth State students that are in the fire department and the fire service and are building upon their education at Plymouth State University, maybe go on as professional firefighters or EMTs or paramedics or public safety. I think there's other internships that maybe we could encroach with them. Something with the police department. They have a criminal justice program here. Have we ever reached out? And I know Alex has had discussions with that. Alex Hutchins, the police chief, has had discussions with that. But is there a way that we can leverage that and have them help us as interns? Interns are a great resource for the town of Plymouth, and maybe we're not capitalizing on that. And they cost us very little money, whether they help with planning and development, whether they help with the fire department, the police department, public works department, whatever it may be, but really looking forward and trying to outline a internship program with Plymouth State University students. I know it's been done in the past, and I'm sure that it can be done in the future by opening up that dialogue.
What's the largest or most complex project that you've led, and what contributed to the success of that project?
Can you just repeat that one more time, Zach?
Yeah, what's the largest or most complex project you've led, and what contributed to the success of that?
There's been a few. I would say probably the largest project that I led every 3 to 5 years was the Slice of Life program. That was a project that was a budgetary value of almost $5 million, and the complexities of going through an RFP process and a procurement process to select a vendor out of hundreds of thousands of vendors across the United States. And the process we went through with visiting those vendors, making sure that they had the tools, the resources that our program was going to need. That's probably been the most comprehensive. Other than that, I would say working through disaster recovery and leading a disaster recovery program of implementing a policy procedure and an offsite destination that we can conduct business if Health Trust ever went down. So if Health Trust burnt or the local government center burnt, we had an alternate location located at Mainstay Technologies. It's not there anymore, so I'm not telling any secrets. We had a location in Tilton that we can move our operations to and be up and running within 5 minutes. That's a project that I forged and led at Health Trust. Another one was succession planning. And that was a huge project of really looking and outlining and evaluating every employee you have and what's the potential of that employee and what's the potential to move them upward and onward in the organization. And that was a 3-year project that I led and was input from, at the time we had 104 employees. So it's really working with 104 employees to evaluate what our needs were, what our potential was, what the needs of the membership was, and who in the organization met all of that criteria to be as part of our succession planning process in moving them forward into a leadership role.
The town manager position covers a lot of different departments, and you've spoken a lot about emergency services, police, fire, code enforcement, the sorts of things that you have deep experience in. How do you come up to speed on the areas that you haven't had as much experience in? Recycling, library, highway.
Recreation and highway
Parks
I've
and
had
Rec, yeah.
extensive experience on. And I'll give you examples. With Public Works, I worked to develop what we call the snowplow rally. And it was working with DPW departments in regards to snowplow operations, policies, procedures, and purchasing. And I've worked with public works directors. I've recruited public works directors across the state. So I have a really good understanding of public works and the needs and the work that they do. Recreation, I taught several classes on recreation with regards to initiation of counselors, junior counselors, identifying risk management needs for recreational departments. I taught that every spring to a number of recreation departments across the state, so I think I have a pretty good understanding of recreational needs. The one that I'm probably least familiar with is library. And as I spoke earlier with the department heads, is that I have to rely upon Diane and Allison, the director and assistant director, for their knowledge, ability, and skills to help me get up to speed and learn more about libraries.
On records retention and destruction, some have complained that they can't get requested records from town hall that town hall should have. What changes are you considering making?
We currently don't have a records retention and destruction policy. So, unfortunately, in town hall, we have records that are in the basement that haven't been filed, recorded, or documented. So it's really tough when planning and development gets a request for some older subdivision, site plan, some type of information that is being requested, is that they truly have to go down into the basement and sort through hundreds of documents to try to find it. And that's our fault. We own that as a town. So we need to come up with a records retention and destruction policy that says, okay, whether it's the fire department, the police department, town administration, planning and development, whatever department it may be, is that we've got to have a unique records and retention policy for each one of those departments. Here's how you're going to retain the record. Here's how you're going to document the record. Here's how you're going to account for the record. And after 3 years, 7 years, 14 years, that record's going to be destructed. Maybe you're going to keep it on electronically, but from a paper perspective, that document's going to be destructed so that we have room to keep records with regards to our policy and process.
You mentioned one of the high priorities for you being a strong and resilient economy. What's your experience with economic development?
Economic development, my experience with economic development is really working with towns and cities on developing their plans and revitalization. Most, I won't say most, a number of communities when I was with Local Government Center would come to us and say, we're looking to contract with this consultant on the revitalization of our community, our downtown area, our business district, a district in sort. So we would review the information with them and look at what potential liabilities and risks they would have in this process. That's really my level of knowledge in that. But I will say, as I said before, David Milner, who is a revitalization expert, I have followed him for many years with regards to revitalization of downtown areas, revitalization. Like I said, in 2006, David Milner, who is the revitalization expert, did the Greater Main Street project. And I followed that project for a long time, and Meredith was with Property Liability Trust during that process. The other thing is he's an amazing writer, and his last white paper was put out in 2017. And I've really educated myself through reading his documents and understanding his ability to be able to forecast the future on economic development. And I mean, we in Plymouth have a really great resource who sits in this room today, Frank Miller, who I'm not afraid to ask questions. I don't know it all, and I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I'm not afraid to ask the network of people that I have for help and guidance and coaching on how to move something forward. I'm not too good to do that.
A few new cards came in, so just a second. New Hampshire's public universities are the most underfunded public universities in the United States. Are you suggesting that in addition to students spending money in the town and the university, that the university be a major financial supporter? Are you suggesting PSU pays more?
I'm suggesting that PSU pays their fair share based on services that are provided to not only the university, but services that we provide to the students that are associated with Plymouth State University. Is that in the Durham community and in the Keene community, they've negotiated several different agreements that are effective in providing funding back to the town. And I'll give you an example. In the town of Durham, they have 4 or 5 different agreements with the university system. The first is infrastructure. You think about the roads, the sidewalks, the signage that the university has within that university block area and the conditions of those streets. In Durham, the university pays $50,000 a year, and that number may have changed since I last looked at it, towards the infrastructure of streets, roads, sidewalks, and signs. Another thing, they pay a life safety agreement. So all the services that are provided by Tommy in his department and Alex's in his department, based on documentation of data, they pay a fee back to the town for those life safety services agreement. The other thing is that if we have campus staff or university staff that's living on campus property and is sending children to our school system, those children ultimately are going to the school system free, no charge. Whereas you and I, if we have children and we're paying property taxes, a portion of that property tax is funding our school system. So in Durham, they have an agreement with the University and Oyster River School District that any staff living on campus that sends students to the Oyster River School District pays a fee that is appropriately measured based on taxable for the school portion, the state portion of the educational fund, to fund that back to the Oyster River School District. And the university system funded the Department of Safety, the complex, the building that Durham has for the fire department. So I think there's several ways, and I'm not saying we put the entire burden on them, but as a community partner, they have to be responsible and pay their fair share for the services that this town provides to the university and the students that attend.
Plymouth has a failing road and sidewalk infrastructure. The highway department does the best they can with the resources that are given to them. As a taxpayer, I'd like to see an improvement to our local infrastructure, understanding that there will always be a cost. How do you hope to achieve improving that infrastructure?
Capital improvement plan is that it's really the highway superintendents to identify the roads, and we've had this done by Lakes Region Planning Commission. We've had a road survey study done. We know where our roads are. We know what roads are failing. It's no secret. It's public information. And we need to do a better job in pre-planning and strategizing on what we can do to improve the infrastructure in this town. And it just can't all be done in 1 year, but if it's included in the capital improvement plan, and if Joe Fadnett, the highway superintendent, identifies the most critical roads in town, then that's how we base it in our capital improvement plan year over year and getting those roads improved. But it's not just fixing those roads, it's also doing some minor repairs and resurfacing in that same year to roads that maybe aren't as critical as the ones that need to be totally repaired.
And I think this will be my last question. I'll make it a two-parter. What kind of businesses would you like to see move into Plymouth? And along the same lines, how would you market Plymouth?
I think that all comes with the revitalization of our Economic Development Committee. And we look at what we have, what we need. Again, we have plenty of niches, but we have plenty of gaps. And I'm not the person that can identify those gaps. It's got to be a small group that kindles that conversation from a business perspective. And I'd look to Mary Ann. I'd look to other downtown businesses. I'd look to explore Plymouth and bring those parties together to be able to have that conversation on what are our gaps, what are we missing, what do we need. And once we can identify that based on a needs assessment, and then we figure out what our marketing plan, our communication plan is going to be to reach out to those types of businesses, those types of merchants, that type of retail, and try to entice them to come to Plymouth. And there might be different means of enticement on how we get them into Plymouth, but it's a bigger conversation that a committee needs to be involved in.
Well, great. I think that wraps our official program here with Scott. Thank you all for your questions. It's greatly appreciated. Feedback forms, please leave them in the back. Feedback is essential to this process. It's why we have these open sessions. So thank you for that in advance as well.